Okay, so I'm gonna just having double checked like these sketches by Frederick Piercy. They were that book they were in actually was published in 1855 and she died in 1856. Lucy Mack Smith history, they say 1845, but this is so I first found this. This is the reason I've really researched Frederick Piercy. Um, and I did several videos like a couple years ago about this book and Frederick Piercy and this drawing because I think I found this like I don't know 2018 and I was like, wait a minute, it's not the bouffant hair and it's combed over, but it's sort of receded. It comes down like that, and but it covers his ears. It's not curly though. I mean, it's not from life. But he did meet Emma, and he did. So Frederick Piercy did, go to Nauvoo. That looks like a pop down collar to me too. Hiram's definitely wearing a popped up collar, but he has sideburns and his hair kind of swoops in front, but still neither of them have like curly hair. And so it's from this, it's called The Route from Liverpool to the Great Salt Lake. It's still engravings, and so it was finished and compiled in 1855. And she died in 1856, but he has some, that's where he does these drawings. And I think my internet's just really slow, so I can't really get all the way through this, but just to kind of explain, if you read through this, you sort of have a totally different font, just barely covering the top of the page, or just sort of Frederick Piercy's notes, and he does talk about he meets Emma, stays with her, and draws Joseph III and David Hiram and Lucy Mack Smith. And so the pages that those were on, it's so slow that I'm probably not gonna. I'll scroll through some of these, but being Pioneer Day is really super interesting. You can just see the contribution he made to these saints coming from England. I don't have any direct lineage directly to any pioneers that joined the church in the 1800s. My pioneers joined in the 1950s in LA, California. So, my uncle was trying to become an actor and he joined the church. My grandfather, sorry. Did I say that right? My grandfather, on my dad's side, was becoming an actor and then joined the church and watched some movie about Oregon and went to Oregon. But my dad's brothers were very LA, taking tap dancing lessons and things. And then they're like working on a farm, built their own house. Just he had some older boys when they did that. And yeah, I don't think I mean, they maybe hired someone, but I think, according to my dad, they pretty much built that house themselves. But so I've scrolled through all these. It was supposed to be this chapter where he goes to Nauvoo, but you can see some of his sketches and he's sort of he's doing the landscape so that there's a book that the people that were traveling before they traveled, it's like I was showing you, that was clothing. I was showing a woman with a shorter skirt that wasn't on the ground. They're like, you don't need a skirt dragging on the ground. It needs to be almost mid-calf. It's kind of shocking, huh? You can see her bloomers underneath, but they're saying you need one of those skirts. That's what you need. So I might scroll through a few of these pages, but it's just so slow, or it's just loading so slow. Maybe just today. This is BYU. I might have found a different version somewhere else, and it was on my old website, I think. I really went into this because people were giving me at the time a really hard time because my guy didn't have that bouffant hair and he has receding hairline. And I'm like, well, this guy has a receding hairline. I mean, it's very similar to also the profiles by Maudsley. There is one by Maudsley where his hair is parted and just sort of curved over a little bit. But you basically can see Gonna I might try. It takes like 30 seconds for it to change a page, and that's like driving me crazy. So I tried making a video a minute ago, and it wasn't good because this was just so slow. Because it has an appendix, but you can just trust me, you can read it yourself. But I'll go ahead and go to the preliminary pages, and and they show a map of Utah and say this is 1855. Okay, so route from Liverpool to the Great Salt Lake with steel engravings and woodcuts by Frederick Piercy. So it was from life. So he sat down and drew Lucy Mack Smith, and it's really neat. I mean, it's Pioneer Day. He drew the landscape. So these people, as they're traveling all across the United States from England, where everything almost looks the same up there, and the weather doesn't change much when you travel, but he's saying his experience. And so when they see a monument or just a mountain that was sort of very unique, he would draw it and he'd say, okay, you're at this place now. And he just, all this artwork. So even though they have a map, but you can maybe give them hope. You're almost to Zion, you're almost to Utah, you're almost there. And it was just recommendations, just giving them as much knowledge as possible of the terrain, what to wear, what to buy before they go. And so yeah, that's 1855. She dies in 1856. This is probably 1842. Like I was saying in the last video, like her hair was that dark. Okay, so what I'm talking about is that in that article, I mean, this does look like artwork, but if you do click on this, it does go, they're showing that picture and saying that's about the photograph. But of course, yes, in the article, they do show the round one, which that looks more like charcoal. And this looks like an actual photograph. I think it's a real photograph. But this woman has dark hair and a nose that comes way down. It's just not at all the shape that you see by Frederick Piercy here. And you can click on this too, and I'll show you again. It's the church's website, her history. They should be crediting. If we click on that, we'll go to another page. Yes, it did. Oh, so he got a photograph of that. That's interesting. But it's by Frederick Piercy. And you can just go back. But yeah, for some reason that isn't Frederick Piercy's work right there. But we can try scrolling through it again. They said it was XVI. I might try this chapter. It just loads so slow. I don't have the patience to pull it up in here and show you. But either way, her nose isn't at all shaped like that. Let's see where he's at right here. So, but this is an example of some of his work. I just thought it might be kind of fun for Pioneer Day to show you the contributions of just an artist. Camp of Keok. Okay, I don't know. I'll see if he's talking about Nauvoo, and then I'm gonna give up. I'm trying to pull it up, but I did read it before a couple years ago, and I remember reading all this. So this is like his story, and then there's a whole history for these saints to read below that. It's gonna take This is like dial-up. Reminds me of dial-up, except it would take longer back in the 90s for things to load. But looking. I think, I don't, maybe as I was reading through that, I thought maybe it was, yeah, Visit to Nauvoo, the temple, interview with Lucy, sketch of her life. Joseph and David Hiram's sons of the visit to the Carthage, sketches of the lives of Joseph and Hiram. And it just still, I went through all of these and it took too long. But you can go to page 61 and read all that. But he meets David Hiram and he's a little boy. There's drawings of him as a little boy. And set out to Nauvoo. The journey, I saw what was called, reading through this. So, okay, this is the correct. Okay, it jumped. There's the Nauvoo temple, so it was destroyed from a fire. Joseph Smith III gives a different story, but he never blames Brigham Young. So some people say Brigham Young did that. He's trying to kill me. It's not true. It's interesting to really read his memoirs and see how he actually defends Brigham Young a lot. Just saying. It's going to take a minute. If I click on the next one, sometimes I'm a few pages ahead. But this is Frederick Piercy's drawings. He met so yeah, there he is. He's talking about John Taylor, and it's the Nauvoo temple is just destroyed at that point. It will take another minute. There we go. So while in Nauvoo, I lodged at the Nauvoo mansion. So I got that. Okay. It will take another second to load. There we go. I finally found it. It was not loading correctly earlier. So this is Frederick Piercy's drawing around 1855 of Joseph Smith III. I was surprised how much older he looked already, but I think he gets married around that time. And David Hiram, he was born in 1844. So you can see him as a little boy. You can see what their noses were like. You can look at more of Frederick Piercy's artwork from life. And then he starts doing sketches of Joseph and Hiram that look nothing at all like this, but this is his artwork. And he's basically copying other people's artwork. I mean, obviously he doesn't have Joseph and Hiram there. I could not fail to regard the old lady with great interest, formerly the residence of Jed, now occupied by his mother, his widow, and her family. So he's talking about the old lady. It's Lucy Mack. Considering her age and affliction, she at the time retained her faculties to a remarkable degree. So she only lives about a year or so. And this might be before 1855, but you just have to read the whole thing, and it's taking way too long to load that I don't want to read the whole thing again. I almost read the whole thing a couple of years ago. So anyway, she spoke freely of her sons and tears in her eyes. So he's talking to Lucy Mack and every other symptom of earnestness, vindicated by her reputations of virtue. During my 2 visits, I was able to take her portrait and the portraits of 2 of her grandsons also, but not of Emma. But that of Joseph, the eldest son, was done on his 21st birthday. He's already got a beard. He was born about 2 o'clock in the morning of the 6th of November, 1832, at Kirtland, Ohio. He was a young man of a most excellent disposition and considerable intelligence. One prominent trait in his character is his affection for his mother. I particularly noticed that his conduct towards her was always most respectful and attentive. The other portrait is of David, so you just kind of understand his personality, and so he's gonna be defensive of his mom. If you start telling her she's going to hell and she's evil, he's gonna get mad. Sorry, controversial stuff. The other portrait is of David, the youngest son. So who was born 5 months after the assassination of his father, who was born about 9 o'clock in the morning. This is so much detail. I haven't read this at all. 9 o'clock in the morning. It'll take a minute to load. I could click on that too. I just don't want to take even longer. 17th of November, 1844. So again, you have the daguerreotype of Emma Smith, and then the 1860s copy of that on my website that I'll pull up here. See, there's an 1860s card receipt. It's got that not a cabinet card. Scrolling. There you go. The paper looks almost exactly the same, except one of the lines of the gold looks slightly thicker. And it was printed in Missouri. This was printed in Illinois. But they think this is David Hiram. I think that is baby David Hiram Smith, who was born November 1844. Okay, so they think the original is 1845. Going back, 17th of November 1844. So she's still holding like a baby. And Cannon was one of the, it's not Cannon, who did this. He has a mild, studious disposition, is passionately fond of drawing, seeming to be never so happy as when he has a pencil and paper in his hand. The other two boys, whom I saw, were very fine, strong, healthy fellows, and as it may be interesting to many, I will say that during some conversations, we could keep reading, and then it should pull up the drawing of Lucy. So we know that he drew her. I'll go ahead and just skip through until I get. And so David Hiram becomes a really good artist. So I think they're bonding. And my theory was like, well, maybe Emma showed him the daguerreotype. And then, of course, it's not a profile, but from his imagination, maybe she didn't want him to sit there and copy it, but she just said, oh, you can look at this, and then took it away. Doesn't want him to steal it because she doesn't know if she trusts him that much, She's not gonna let him have it. Yeah, so he's still Nauvoo, and then goes back to Keokuk, and then to Carthage. Okay, so if we keep going, we should be able to find in this 1855 book the drawing of Lucy Mack Smith a year before she died. And if I can't get to it, I'm going to stop because it takes forever and ever and ever. Okay, the internet might be working slightly better. See, here's his sketch. But that doesn't look at all like this. It's just, where did he come up with that? He's sketching. This is sort of copying that painting. There's an actual painting of Hiram. Cannot be displayed? Why? So they're having issues. So this is me going, oh well. But I from that book, I went ahead and screenshot this. You can click. I'm trying to click on a better version of it. So that other one was from Curtizit, LDS. Oh, this is a good version of it. This is by Frederick Piercy. She has eyebrows. You can see them. And you don't really see her hair. She's really covering it with this bonnet. You can just sort of see, she's pretty elderly. It's a year before she dies, but she's not gaunt looking. And so if we compare her I think that's a really good version of it. But you can go to that. There's other copies of the route to Liverpool. But this one just a really long neck, dark hair. We already know from Mansell's artwork her hair was already graying and already going very, very dark. But you do see these sunken in eyes. But this woman looks like she has brown eyes and dark hair. Okay. This doesn't, it's hard to know. I'd have to check through accounts. I don't think any of the siblings of Joseph Smith had brown eyes, so I don't think she had brown eyes. You can see her eyebrows. She was here's one other thing. She was like 4'11", so she was really, really short, she looks very small. If we go back to that, I'm not sure if she really looks as small. It's hard to tell. And there just isn't much detail. I mean, yeah, she's wearing like a thin bonnet. She's elderly. But really, you could definitely see that nose very well and the shape of her face. Super gaunt. Whereas where she died, that wasn't her nose. A year before she died, she was elderly at this point. So I don't at all think that that's a photo of her. Because her nose is, your nose grows, but it doesn't totally change in shape. You've got like President Monson has a nose that comes down like that. But it was like that when he was younger. It didn't just suddenly drop down like this. I mean, your nose does grow. If you look at these men, there he is quite a bit younger. You can just even see, like, that's just the shape of his nose. That's how his nose was. So he's very young right there. But you don't just suddenly get a nose that's shaped like that. Especially when you're comparing like these two sisters. You got one sister, definitely much longer nose, and then her nose is just up a little bit more. Her nose is lower. She's younger, but she's older, and her nose did grow, but you can see the roundness of her nostrils and just that the cartilage just still stayed up quite a bit higher, even though she's quite a bit older. She looks a lot more like her mom, and she still has pretty heavy eyelids. So maybe that's more like the dad. So that's all I have to say about that. But yeah, being one last thing, you won't find. I looked at this, so I spent the $15, read their article. They talk about this locket, and one thing that's really interesting is there's a drawing sketched on the outside of it that looks like a river, but it doesn't look like there's painting of Nauvoo by, let's look up, so David Hiram became an artist. David Hiram Smith. You can see, well, what did it look like? And where houses, you do have some homes on the edge of the river, but the Mississippi's huge. So if we look at, I think that's his main painting. It does not look like, there you go. So you just need to look at the article, but you can see, oh, there he is, maybe eating some lunch, So there, the mansion, there's the Nauvoo mansion, and there was the Nauvoo house. I don't know. Yeah. But they're not directly on the river. And so when you look at that sketch, it looks like this, like a thinner river and buildings directly on the river. And so this is in Norway. Again, this man, I think, is from Norway. I believe the man's from Norway. And I think that sketch looks like this. You can just sort of see these buildings from Norway. So that's just what I'm thinking. This is one famous city. Just you can only see it if you click on the article, that there is a very unique sketch of this thinner looking river with buildings and buildings, but these buildings are on directly. There's no landing like these sketches, like here's some land and then you get a building. They weren't stupid enough to put, because that's just how the Mississippi is. You can't put a house directly in the water. It's a huge, huge river. It's not the Mississippi that is sketched on this locket. So, yep. And then I'll still say no to that other alleged image of him. And I don't know what's going on here, so I'll give you a link to this. But suddenly, refresh the page to access restricted or unpublished. So I need to log in at this point. It's giving me issues. Yep. So this is from life. She's elderly. Her hair's not black. It's gray. Her eyes almost look a little bit darker there, but I think her eyes weren't that dark. I don't think they were black. I don't think her hair was black, and that's very rare. It's a unique thing. You would see it in 1842. Her hair would still look dark. But anyway, have a good day.